very good. In the book of Genesis, where we find God's first self-revelation to humanity, there is a recurring refrain, and God saw that it was good. After creating the heavens, the sea, the earth, and all it contains, God created man and woman. God said, "Let us make man in our own image, in the likeness of ourselves, and let them be masters of the fish of the sea, the birds of heaven, the cattle, all the wild beasts, and all the reptiles that crawl upon the earth." God created man in the image of himself. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. And so it was. God saw all he had made, and indeed it was very good. Note the change at this point. What has been made is not only good, it is very good. At the summit of this creation, which was very good, God placed man. Only man and woman among all creatures were made by God in his own image. This special bond with God explains the privileged position of the first human couple in the order of creation. In contrast to all other created beings, the human person is immediately given a responsibility for the rest of creation. And God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over every living thing that moves upon the earth." God entrusted the whole of creation to the man and woman. For man created in God's image received a mandate to subject to himself the earth and all that it contains, and to govern the world with justice and holiness, a mandate to relate himself and the totality of things to him who was to be acknowledged as the Lord and Creator of all. Thus, throughout the course of the centuries, men have labored to better the circumstances of their lives through a monumental amount of individual and collective effort. To believers, this human activity accords with God's will. However, God never gave the human person absolute power over the rest of creation. There are limits. Man must not make arbitrary use of the earth, subjecting it without restraint to his will, as though it did not have its own requisites and a prior God-given purpose, which man can indeed develop, but must not betray. Therefore, a correct understanding of the environment prevents the utilitarian reduction of nature to a mere object to be manipulated and exploited. At the same time, it must not absolutize nature and place it above the dignity of the human person himself. Christian culture has always recognized the creatures that surround man as also gifts of God to be nurtured and safeguarded with a sense of gratitude to the Creator. Pope Benedict XVI said, "The environment must be seen as God's gift to all people, and the use we make of it entails a shared responsibility for all humanity, especially the poor and future generations." God intended the earth with everything contained in it for the use of all human beings and peoples. Thus, attention must always be paid to this universal destination of earthly goods. In using them, therefore, man should regard the external things that he legitimately possesses not only as his own, but also as common, in the sense that they should be able to benefit not only him, but others. Therefore, it is manifestly unjust that a privileged few should continue to accumulate excess goods, squandering available resources, while masses of people are living in conditions of misery at the very lowest level of subsistence. The human person is created in relation with everything else that is created, with inanimate things and with living things, with plants and animals, and with other human beings. Also, the human person is created in relationship with God. From what has been said so far, we can discern several important points. The world and all that is in it exists because God so desired. It is not ours to do with as we will. The human person, created in the image of God, is in a distinctive relation with the rest of creation, of which she or he, however, remains part. The dominion that human persons are to have over all other living beings and over the earth itself is one of responsibility, of making fruitful, of caring for with holiness and righteousness. In other words, this dominion is a sacred trust. While individually responsible for his or her acts, the human person exists in relation to others and cannot seek his or her own good alone, but rather is to seek the good of all, the common good. These are some of the lessons we can draw from the sacred writings of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. We can find in them connections with other religious traditions as well. I want to speak about the tradition of the Catholic Church concerning care for the environment. Of course, you invite the representative of the Holy See to come to give you this keynote address. It's no surprise that I want to talk about this. As we have already seen, the Catholic Church has a long-standing commitment to protect the nature and the environment. Many church documents and many popes have spoken about the relationship between human beings and the environment. Also, at various international conferences, from Stockholm in 1972, the first United Nations Conference on International Environmental Issues, to Copenhagen in 2009, my colleagues in the Diplomatic Service of the Holy See have intervened to express the concern of the Holy See for the environment. I have a book here, From Stockholm to Johannesburg, a historical overview of the concern of the Holy See for the environment. It's a nice little book with all sorts of first-hand documents published by the Vatican Publishing House. For example, Pope Paul VI in 1971 pointed out, man is suddenly becoming aware that by an ill-considered exploitation of nature, he risks destroying it and becoming in his turn the victim of this degradation. Not only is the material environment becoming a permanent menace, pollution and refuse, new illnesses and absolute destructive capacity, but the human framework is no longer under man's control, thus creating an environment for tomorrow which may well be intolerable. This is a wide-ranging social problem which concerns the entire human family. In 1979, Pope John Paul II wrote, "What is in question is the advancement of persons, not just the multiplying of things that people use. It is a matter not so much of having more as of being more. Indeed, there is already a real perceptible danger that while man's dominion over the world of things is making enormous advances, he should lose the essential threads of his dominion and in various ways let his humanity be subjected to the world and become himself something subject to manipulation in many ways, even if the manipulation is not often perceptible directly, through the whole of the organization of community life, through the production system, and through pressure from the means of social communication. Man cannot relinquish himself or the place in the visible world that belongs to him. He cannot become the slave of things, the slave of economic systems, the slave of production, the slave of his own products. A civilization purely materialistic in outline condemns man to such slavery, even at times, no doubt, this occurs contrary to the intentions and the very premises of its pioneers. In 1990, Pope John Paul II devoted his message for the World Day of Peace to the theme, "Peace with God, the Creator, peace with all of creation." His emphasis was on our relationship with the universe all around us and was a call for an education in ecological responsibility. He wrote, "In our day, there is a growing awareness that world peace is threatened not only by the arms race, regional conflicts, and continued injustices among peoples and nations, but also by a lack of due respect for nature, by the plundering of natural resources, and by a progressive decline in the quality of life. And he added that a new ecological awareness is beginning to emerge, which, rather than being downplayed, ought to be encouraged to develop into concrete programs and initiatives. Pope John Paul II affirmed the goodness of creation, called for a better understanding of the relationship between human activity and the whole of creation, spoke about the ecological crisis, and pointed out its moral dimension. He also outlined some solutions to the problem: a greater respect for life, for the dignity of the human person, and for the integrity of creation; a greater awareness that the fruits of the earth should benefit everyone; a more internationally coordinated approach to the management of Earth's goods; the necessity for each individual state to accept its own responsibility, as well as to strengthen cooperative and peaceful relations among states. He also said that there is an urgent moral need for a new solidarity, especially in relations between developing nations and those that are highly industrialized. It is necessary to address the structural forms of poverty. It is necessary to work to eliminate war and the threat of war. Finally, he said that we must take a serious look at our lifestyles. Instant gratification and consumerism cause ecological damage. This is why an education in ecological responsibility is urgent. In 2004, the Holy See published this compendium of the social doctrine of the Church, which contains all the Church's teaching in the area of society, politics. It has one entire chapter, chapter 10, dedicated to safeguarding the environment. Now, I'm not going to summarize this because I've been making continuous reference to it throughout my address this morning. This year, in 2010, Pope Benedict's message for the World Day of Peace was dedicated to the theme, "If you want to cultivate peace, protect creation." He evokes the book of Genesis, the Second Vatican Council, and the contributions of his predecessors, Pope Paul VI and Pope John Paul II. Pope Benedict XVI says, "It is imperative that mankind renew and strengthen that covenant between human beings and the environment, which should mirror their creative love of God, from whom we come and towards whom we are journeying. The ecological problem must be dealt with not only because of the chilling prospects of environmental degradation on the horizon. The real motivation must be the quest for authentic worldwide solidarity inspired by the values of charity, justice, and the common good." And he outlines new dimensions of human solidarity. Solidarity is intergenerational, between generations of different times, and intra-generational, within the same generation, of the same time, but perhaps of different places. He says, "The goods of creation belong to humanity as a whole, yet the current pace of environmental exploitation is seriously endangering the supply of certain natural resources, not only for the present generation, but above all, for generations yet to come. It is not hard to see that environmental degradation is often due to the lack of far-sighted official policies or to the pursuit of myopic economic interests, which then tragically become a serious threat to creation. Future generations cannot be saddled with the cost of our use of common environmental resources. We have inherited from past generations, and we have benefited from the work of our contemporaries. For this reason, we have obligations towards all, and we cannot refuse to interest ourselves in those who will come after us to enlarge the human family. Universal solidarity represents a benefit as well as a duty. This is a responsibility that present generations have toward those of the future, a responsibility that also concerns individual states and the international community." He continues, "In addition to a fairer sense of intergenerational solidarity, there is also an urgent moral need for a renewed sense of intra-generational solidarity,